Dr. Kang Jiwoo looked through her microscope at the tiny creatures swimming in the sample. They were from a planet she had never visited, brought to the station just last week. These microbes were strange and beautiful, glowing soft blue under the lab lights. She smiled as she made notes on her computer. This was why she loved her job as a xenobiologist on Nexus Prime, the biggest research station in the galaxy. Suddenly, red lights flashed across the ceiling. A loud alarm filled the room. Jiwoo jumped in her seat, nearly knocking over her coffee. The calm voice of the station computer spoke through the speakers. "Emergency in Sector 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. This is not a drill." Jiwoo quickly saved her work and joined the stream of people rushing through the corridors. Humans, tall blue luminary, floating whispers, and dozens of other species all moved toward the emergency shelters. Everyone stayed calm. These drills happened sometimes on a station this size. But this time Jiwoo noticed the alarm sounded different, more urgent. She found herself next to Commander Lee Dae-hyun in the crowd. He was the human military liaison, always serious but kind. His uniform was perfectly neat as always. "What happened?" Jiwoo asked him. "System failure," Lee said, his face tight with concern. "Something went wrong with the power grid in Sector 7. They're shutting it down before it spreads." The evacuation took only 30 minutes. The station crew was well trained. Jiwoo waited in the shelter with hundreds of others, drinking bad coffee from a machine and checking her messages. People talked quietly, worried but not panicking. The aliens around her spoke in dozens of languages, but the translation devices everyone wore made it easy to understand. After 2 hours, the all-clear signal sounded. The system failure was fixed. People began returning to their quarters and workstations. Jiwoo stretched and prepared to go back to her lab. Then another announcement came. "Medical emergency. All medical personnel report to Bay 5 immediately." Jiwoo wasn't medical personnel, but she was curious. She followed the crowd toward Bay 5. When she arrived, she saw something that made her heart sink. In the center of the bay, behind a transparent force field, was a Vexian cub. Jiwoo had only seen Vexians a few times before. They were one of the predator species in the galaxy, tall and powerful with crystalline bodies that reflected light like diamonds. This cub was small, maybe 3 feet tall, but even at that size it looked dangerous. Its body was covered in sharp crystal edges that could cut through metal. But what struck Jiwoo most was the sound. The cub was making a high-pitched keening noise that hurt to hear. It paced back and forth inside the force field, its crystal claws scraping against the floor with a sound like nails on glass. Its whole body shook. "Poor thing," someone next to Jiwoo whispered. A tall Vexian adult stood outside the force field, pressing its hands against the barrier. Ambassador Thexrel, Jiwoo realized. She had seen the ambassador at diplomatic functions. Now Thexrel looked desperate, calling to the cub in their own language. But the cub didn't seem to hear. Chief Medical Officer Velshara, a luminary with glowing blue skin, stood nearby with several assistants. She held a data pad and looked frustrated. "What happened?" Lee asked, appearing next to Jiwoo. A nearby technician explained. "The ambassador's family was in Sector 7 during the evacuation." In the confusion, the cub got separated. By the time they found it, it had already entered Fear Cascade. "Fear Cascade?" Jiwoo asked. "It's a Vexian thing," the technician said. "When their young get separated from family, they go into this state. Their body floods with stress chemicals. If they don't calm down within 48 hours, the chemicals can damage their organs. It can kill them." Jiwoo watched as Velshara tried different treatments. First, they pumped calming gases into the force field. The cub didn't react. Then they projected holograms of the ambassador, showing the parent was nearby. The cub ignored them. They tried sound frequencies, light patterns, even telepathic contact from an empath species. Nothing worked. Hours passed. The cub's cries grew weaker but didn't stop. Its movements became more frantic. It started throwing itself against the walls of the force field, leaving cracks in the metal floor where its claws struck. "Why can't the ambassador just go in there?" someone asked. "Too dangerous," Velshara said, her voice tired. "In Fear Cascade, Vexian cubs don't recognize anyone. It would attack even its own parent. Those claws could kill an adult Vexian." Jiwoo found herself unable to look away. She had worked with distressed animals before back on Earth. She had volunteered at a rescue shelter for years before joining the space program. Something about the cub's behavior felt familiar. The way it paced. The way it kept looking for corners. trying to squeeze itself into small spaces. The way it flinched at every movement outside the force field, it reminded her of a frightened cat. That night, Jiwoo couldn't sleep. She lay in her quarters thinking about the cub. The station news feeds were full of updates. The ambassador had taken a shuttle to another station before the emergency and couldn't get back for several more hours because the docking bay was damaged. The cub had now been in fear cascade for 18 hours. Medical experts from across the galaxy were being consulted through video calls. Jiwoo watched the footage on her screen. Every expert had ideas. More drugs, different frequencies of light, temperature changes, pressure adjustments. Everything was complicated, technical, scientific, but Jiwoo kept thinking about that cat from years ago. She had found it under a car, hissing and scared, too frightened to let anyone near. The shelter had tried everything: special food, calming music, medications. Nothing worked. The cat just got more frightened. Then one day, Jiwoo had brought in a simple cardboard box. She put it in the cat's cage and left. When she came back an hour later, the cat was inside the box, quiet and calm. Within a week, the cat was ready for adoption. The memory made Jiwoo sit up in bed. She opened her computer and started researching Vexian biology. She read everything she could find about their home planet, their evolution, their social structures. Vexians had evolved as ambush predators. On their homeworld, they lived in crystal caves, hiding in small spaces and waiting for prey. Their cubs, especially, spent their first years in small, dark dens where they felt safe. Jiwoo looked at the video feed from the medical bay. The cub was being held in a huge room with tall ceilings and bright lights. Open space all around. No hiding places. No den. To the medical team, they were providing the best care. Clean, sterile, monitored. But to a frightened predator cub, it must feel like being trapped in the open with nowhere to hide. Jiwoo made a decision. She sent a message to Commander Lee requesting an urgent meeting. Then she tried to sleep, but her mind kept spinning with ideas. By morning, the news was worse. The cub had been in fear cascade for 24 hours. Its vital signs were starting to decline. Station Commander Korvek, a strict military leader from the Kryn species, had authorized the use of heavy sedation if the cub wasn't stable within 12 more hours. Jiwoo knew sedation might save the cub's life short-term, but Vexian experts warned it could damage the cub's development. Young Vexians needed to learn to manage their fear response naturally. Forcing them unconscious during fear cascade could leave them emotionally scarred for life. She met Commander Lee in the cafeteria. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. "I might have an idea," Jiwoo said. "It's going to sound strange." Lee sipped his coffee and nodded. "At this point, I'll listen to anything." Jiwoo took a deep breath. "I think the cub needs a box." Lee stared at her. "A box?" "A box," Jiwoo confirmed. And then she began to explain. Commander Lee sat back in his chair and looked at Jiwoo with a mix of confusion and interest. Around them, the cafeteria buzzed with the usual morning crowd. Scientists, engineers, and diplomats from dozens of species grabbed breakfast before starting their shifts. "Explain it to me again," Lee said. Slowly, Jiwoo leaned forward. "Think about what the cub needs right now. Not what we think it needs, but what its instincts are screaming for." "Safety," Lee said. "Yes, but not our version of safety. The medical bay is clean, monitored, temperature-controlled. That's safe by our standards. But to a young predator that evolved hiding in crystal caves, that big open room is the opposite of safe. It's exposed, vulnerable." Lee nodded slowly. "Go on." "When I volunteered at the animal shelter on Earth, we had this problem all the time. Scared cats, dogs, even rabbits. They'd be so frightened they wouldn't eat or sleep. We tried everything: medication, special food, quiet rooms. But you know what worked better than anything? A box," Lee said, starting to understand. "A simple cardboard box. Put it in the cage, and within hours the animal would climb inside and calm down. Something about being enclosed on all sides, being able to hide, made them feel safe. Their stress levels would drop immediately." Lee rubbed his face. "You want to give an alien predator cub a cardboard box. Not cardboard. We don't have that on the station. But something similar. A small enclosed space where the cub can hide and feel protected." "This is insane," Lee said. But he was smiling slightly. "The medical team has tried every advanced treatment in the Galactic database, and you want to use a box." "Sometimes the simple answer is the right answer," Jiwoo said. "We've been thinking about this wrong. Everyone's trying to use technology and medicine to fix a problem that isn't medical. It's behavioral, instinctual. Lee was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up. All right, let's go talk to Commander Korvek and Chief Medical Officer Velshara. But Jiwoo, you need to be prepared. They're not going to like this. He was right. An hour later, they stood in Commander Korvek's office. The Kryn commander was insect-like, with hard shell-like skin and multiple eyes that could look in different directions at once. Right now, all those eyes were focused on Jiwoo with something that looked like disbelief. A box, Korvek said, his translator making his voice sound flat and emotionless. Yes, Commander, Jiwoo said, trying to keep her voice steady. Chief Medical Officer Velshara stood nearby. Her blue skin glowing brighter with what Jiwoo had learned meant irritation. Dr. Kang, I appreciate human enthusiasm, but this is ridiculous. We have tried 17 different medical interventions. We have consulted experts from 5 different predator species. And you think a simple container will solve this? I think, Jiwoo said carefully, that we've been treating this as a medical problem when it's actually a psychological one. The cub isn't sick. It's scared. Of course it's scared, Velshara said. That's why we've administered anti-anxiety medication, created a calm environment, and that environment isn't calm to the cub, Jiwoo interrupted, immediately regretting it. I'm sorry. What I mean is we're judging calm by our standards. Open space, good lighting, clean air. But the cub's evolutionary programming is telling it that open space equals danger. Commander Lee stepped forward. Commanders, we have 36 hours before you authorize heavy sedation. Dr. Kang's suggestion is unconventional, yes. But it's also low risk. If it doesn't work, we've lost nothing but time. And if it does work, he left the sentence hanging. Korvek's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, which Jiwoo had learned meant he was thinking hard. One attempt, Korvek finally said. You have 12 hours to construct this on box. If the cub shows no improvement within 2 hours of introduction, we proceed with sedation. Agreed? Agreed, Jiwoo said quickly, before anyone could change their mind. As they left the office, Velshara called after them. Dr. Kang? I hope you're right. For the cub's sake. There was something in her voice that wasn't anger. It was hope. Jiwoo found Engineer Park Minho in the maintenance section of the station. He was a cheerful man who always seemed to have grease on his hands and a smile on his face. When Jiwoo explained what she needed, his smile grew wider. A box for an alien predator cub, he said, already pulling up designs on his computer. This station gets more interesting every day. It needs to be the right size, Jiwoo said, showing him measurements she'd calculated based on the cub's body. Big enough that it doesn't feel trapped, but small enough that it feels enclosed. One entrance. No windows. What about padding? Minho asked. Climate control? Lighting? No, keep it simple. Plain walls, plain floor. I want it to be like a cave, not a bedroom. Minho looked at her with new respect. You grew up on a farm, didn't you? How did you know? Jiwoo asked, surprised. Because you think like someone who understands animals. My family raised chickens and goats. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. He started selecting materials from his inventory. I can use composite panels. Lightweight but strong. We can build it in 6 hours. They worked through the afternoon. Minho cut the panels while Jiwoo assembled them, creating a cube roughly 2 meters on each side. The entrance was a simple opening, just big enough for the cub to fit through comfortably. Word spread through the station about what they were doing. People started gathering in the maintenance bay to watch. Some looked curious. Others looked skeptical. A few were openly laughing. They're really going to try the box, someone whispered. Humans and their primitive solutions, another voice said, not quietly enough. Jiwoo tried to ignore them. She focused on the work, making sure every edge was smooth, every corner properly secured. This had to be perfect. Commander Lee appeared with coffee and food. The station news feeds are having a field day with this, he said quietly. There's a betting pool on whether it will work. What are the odds? Jiwoo asked, not sure she wanted to know. 10 to 1 against us. Lee handed her the coffee. I put 50 credits on you. Despite everything, Jiwoo laughed. Thanks for the confidence. I've been in the military long enough to know that sometimes the unexpected solution is the right one, Lee said. Besides, I've seen you work. You care about getting it right. 5 hours later, the box was complete. It looked simple, almost crude compared to the high-tech equipment surrounding it. Just a plain cube with one opening. It's perfect, Minho said, standing back to admire their work. I hope so, Jiwoo said. They transported the box to the medical bay on a cargo platform. By now, the cub had been in fear cascade for 32 hours. When Jiwoo arrived, she could hear its cries before she even entered the room. The sound was weaker than before, but somehow more desperate. Through the force field, she could see the cub pacing in tight circles, its crystal body dull instead of shining. It looked exhausted. Ambassador Thexrel stood in the same spot as before, one hand against the force field. The ambassador looked up as Jiwoo entered. You're the human who wants to try something new, Thexrel said. Their translator made the Vexian language sound like music and breaking glass combined. Yes, Jiwoo said. I know it seems strange, but I don't care if it's strange, Thexrel said. If you can help my child, I will be grateful forever. Please try anything. The raw emotion in those words made Jiwoo's throat tight. She nodded and turned to where Velshara was preparing her equipment. We're ready, the medical officer said. Her voice was professional, but Jiwoo could see the doubt in her glowing eyes. The force field will be dropped long enough to place the structure inside. Then we monitor for 2 hours. A crowd had gathered again. It seemed like half the station was watching, either in person or through the video feeds. Jiwoo saw faces she recognized. Scientists she worked with, the cafeteria staff, even some of the diplomats from the council chambers. Everyone wanted to see if the human's crazy idea would work. Minho guided the cargo platform through the force field opening. The box slid smoothly onto the floor of the containment area. The cub flinched away from it, pressing itself against the far wall. The force field closed. Minho and Jiwoo stepped back. Now came the hard part, waiting. For 5 long minutes, nothing happened. The cub stayed pressed against the far wall, as far from the box as possible. Its keening cry continued, softer now, but still painful to hear. The crystal claws scraped against the floor in a rhythm that spoke of pure distress. Jiwoo stood with her arms crossed, trying to look more confident than she felt. Around her, the crowd whispered. She heard fragments of conversations. It's not working. The cub is ignoring it completely. What did she expect? A simple box couldn't possibly. Commander Lee moved closer to Jiwoo. Give it time, he said quietly. Velshara watched her monitors, her blue skin pulsing with concentration. Vital signs remained critical, she reported. Heart rate elevated. Stress hormones at dangerous levels. No change from baseline. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The cub continued its frantic pacing, occasionally throwing itself against the force field with thuds that made everyone wince. Jiwoo felt doubt creeping in. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe this was just a human idea that didn't translate to alien species. Maybe she was wasting everyone's time while a child suffered. Then something changed. The cub paused in its pacing. Its head turned toward the box. For a moment it stood completely still, which it hadn't done since the crisis began. Look, someone whispered. The crowd fell silent. Every eye in the room watched the small crystalline figure. Slowly, carefully, the cub took a step toward the box. Then another. Its sensory appendages, which had been pressed flat against its body in fear, began to extend slightly. It's investigating, Minho breathed. The cub circled the box at a distance, keeping low to the ground. Predator behavior, Jiwoo thought, checking for threats before approaching something new. That was a good sign. It meant the cub was thinking instead of just panicking. After 2 complete circles, the cub moved closer. It extended one sensory appendage toward the entrance of the box, testing the air inside. Then it pulled back, uncertain. Come on, Jiwoo whispered under her breath. It's safe. You can do it. The cub took another step closer. Then another. It was right at the entrance now, peering inside the dark opening. Ambassador Thexrel had both hands pressed against the force field now. Jiwoo glanced over and saw tears running down the ambassador's crystalline face, catching the light like diamonds. The cub made its decision. In one quick movement, it darted into the box and disappeared from view. The room held its breath. Seconds ticked by. Jiwoo stared at the box's entrance, waiting for something to happen. The cub could emerge at any moment, still distressed. This could still fail. But the seconds turned into minutes and the cub stayed inside. The vital signs, Velshara said suddenly, her voice sharp with surprise. She adjusted her monitors, checking and rechecking the readings. The vital signs are changing. Changing how? Commander Korvac asked, moving to look at the screens. Heart rate is decreasing. Stress hormones are dropping. Brain activity is shifting from panic patterns to— Velshara paused, her glowing eyes wide. To rest patterns. Natural rest, not sedation. The crowd erupted in whispers. Jiwoo felt Lee's hand on her shoulder, squeezing in congratulation. But she couldn't take her eyes off the box. It's working, Minho said, grinning. It's actually working. Over the next hour, the transformation was remarkable. The keening cries that had filled the medical bay for 32 hours fell silent. The monitors showed the cub's stress levels dropping to normal ranges. Its breathing slowed and deepened. Can we see inside the box? Someone asked. No cameras, Jiwoo said quickly. We can't disturb it. The whole point is that it feels hidden and safe. Velshara nodded, still studying her readings. Dr. Kang is correct. The external sensors show the cub has curled into a resting position. It's exhibiting normal sleep preparation behavior for a young Vexian. Ambassador Thexerel turned to Jiwoo. Up close, the ambassador was even more impressive, towering over her with a body that looked like it was carved from crystal. But the expression on that alien face was one Jiwoo recognized, pure parental relief. How did you know? Thexerel asked. How did you understand what my child needed when I did not? Jiwoo thought about how to explain. On Earth we have many predator species. Cats, dogs, wolves, bears. They're all different, but they share certain instincts. One of those instincts is the need for a den when they're scared. A small, enclosed space where they can hide and feel protected. But Vexians are nothing like Earth animals, one of the scientists in the crowd said. No, Jiwoo agreed, but fear is fear. And the need for safety crosses species. I've seen it in animals on Earth, and now I've seen it here. Sometimes the basic needs are universal. Commander Korvac stepped forward. The insectoid commander's face was hard to read, but his voice held a note of respect. I was skeptical. I must admit this publicly. I believed we needed advanced medical intervention, not— He gestured at the box. A simple container. The container isn't what matters, Jiwoo said. What matters is understanding what the cub needed emotionally, not just physically. Velshara was making rapid notes on her datapad. This changes everything. We've been approaching behavioral crises with purely medical solutions. But if emotional and instinctual needs are this important, we need to rethink our protocols, Korvac finished. Agreed. Over the next few hours, the medical bay transformed from a place of crisis to something more like a celebration. The news spread through the station faster than Jiwoo expected. People she'd never met stopped her in the corridors to congratulate her. Her message inbox filled with notes from colleagues across the galaxy. But the best moment came when Ambassador Thexerel's shuttle finally docked. The ambassador rushed to the medical bay, moving faster than Jiwoo had thought possible for someone so large. Velshara carefully lowered the force field. Thexerel moved to the box and made a soft clicking sound, a Vexian parental call. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a small crystal head poked out of the box's entrance. The cub's eyes locked onto its parent. It made a happy chirping sound and bounded out of the box, launching itself into Thexerel's arms. The ambassador caught the cub and held it close, making soothing sounds in their own language. Jiwoo felt tears in her own eyes. She turned away to give them privacy, but Thexerel called to her. Wait, please. The ambassador approached, still holding the cub. You saved my child's life. By the customs of my people, I owe you a life debt. That's not necessary, Jiwoo said quickly. I just did what I thought would help. That is exactly why the debt is owed, Thexerel said. You helped when others with more status and authority had failed. You saw my child not as a medical problem, but as a frightened young being who needed comfort. The cub reached out one small crystal hand toward Jiwoo. She carefully took it, feeling the smooth, warm surface. The cub chirped happily. I think Kreacha likes you, Thexerel said. Later that evening, Jiwoo sat in her quarters with a cup of tea, trying to process everything that had happened. Her computer showed dozens of messages, but she was too tired to read them all. There was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Commander Lee standing there with 2 bottles of something that looked like beer. Thought you might need this, he said. They sat in her small living area, drinking in comfortable silence for a while. You know this is going to change things, Lee finally said. What do you mean? You just proved that human thinking, our way of solving problems, has value in the galactic community. That's huge. There are going to be consequences. Jiwoo sipped her drink. Good consequences or bad consequences? Both, probably. Lee said. But mostly good, I think. People are going to start listening to human ideas now, taking us more seriously. I just wanted to help the cub, Jiwoo said. I know, Lee said, smiling. That's what makes it perfect. As Jiwoo got ready for bed that night, she looked at the messages on her computer. One caught her eye. It was from Velshara, Dr. Kang, it read. I have been a doctor for 40 years. I believed I understood how to treat patients. Today you showed me that I still have much to learn. Would you be willing to discuss your methods? I think the medical community needs to hear about this. Respectfully, Velshara. Jiwoo smiled and typed a quick reply. I'd be happy to talk. Tomorrow? As she lay in bed, Jiwoo thought about that scared cat from years ago, hiding in its cardboard box. She never imagined that simple memory would one day help save an alien child's life. Sometimes, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, the simplest solutions really are the best ones. The story of the box spread through the galaxy faster than Jiwoo could have imagined. Within 3 days, every major news network from hundreds of worlds was running features about it. The titles varied, but the message was the same. A human had solved a crisis that advanced alien medicine couldn't. Jiwoo tried to go back to her normal work in the lab, but it was impossible. Her schedule filled with meeting requests. Scientists wanted to understand her methods. Diplomats wanted to discuss the implications. Even entertainment networks wanted interviews. You're famous, Minho said, grinning as he delivered a package to her lab. My cousin on Earth says people are talking about you in restaurants. That's terrifying, Jiwoo said, but she smiled. The most surprising development came 5 days after the incident. Commander Korvek summoned her to his office. When she arrived, she found Velshara already there, along with several other senior officers she didn't recognize. Dr. Kang, Korvek began, we have a problem, or rather several problems. All of them involve species experiencing behavioral or psychological difficulties that conventional methods haven't solved. He brought up a holographic display. The first image showed a group of Kryn soldiers on a military ship. This unit has been unable to adapt to long-term shipboard deployment, Korvek explained. Their performance is declining. We've tried additional training, medical interventions, even rotation schedules. Nothing works. Jiwoo studied the image. What do Kryn normally live in? What's their natural habitat? Underground colonies, Korvek said. We evolved in tunnel systems beneath our planet's surface. And your ships have high ceilings and open spaces, Jiwoo said, seeing the pattern immediately. Just like the medical bay where we kept Kreecha. Velshara leaned forward, her blue skin glowing with interest. You think they need smaller, more enclosed spaces? I think they probably feel exposed and vulnerable in those big open areas, Jiwoo said. Humans have the same problem sometimes. We call it agoraphobia, fear of open spaces. It's not rational, but it's real. The next image showed a Luminari colony station. This community is experiencing what you would call anxiety, Velshara said. Widespread and unexplained. Medical scans show nothing wrong, but people report feeling constantly on edge. Tell me about Luminari evolution, Jiwoo said. We come from a planet with very long day-night cycles, Velshara explained. 30-hour days, 30-hour nights. Our biology evolved around that rhythm, and the colony station uses standard galactic time, Jiwoo guessed. 24-hour cycles. Correct, Velshara said, looking embarrassed. I never made the connection. They went through 6 more cases, each one following the same pattern. Advanced species with advanced problems, but the solutions were surprisingly simple once you understood the basic needs being ignored. We need your help, Korvek said finally. The Galactic Medical Council wants you to present your findings at their annual symposium next month. Jiwoo felt her stomach drop. The symposium? That's the biggest medical gathering in the galaxy. Exactly, Velshara said. Your methods need to be shared, systematized, taught to others. That evening, Jiwoo met with Commander Lee in the station's observation deck. Through the massive windows, stars stretched in all directions. It was one of her favorite places to think. I don't know if I can do this, she said. They want me to present to thousands of the best medical minds in the galaxy. What if I'm wrong? What if the box thing was just luck? Lee was quiet for a moment. Do you think it was luck? No, Jiwoo admitted. I think we've been looking at problems wrong. Everyone's so focused on using the most advanced technology, the newest treatments, that they forget about basic needs. Then that's what you tell them. Lee said. But Jiwoo, you need to understand something. This isn't just about medicine anymore. This is about humanity's place in the galactic community. What do you mean? For 20 years, we've been the new kids in the galaxy. The young species that everyone treats like children. Some species think we're interesting. Others think we're primitive. But nobody really takes us seriously. Lee gestured at the stars. You changed that. You showed that our way of thinking, staying connected to our evolutionary past, trusting our instincts, has value. That's huge. But it also means there's pressure on you to get this right. No pressure then, Jiwoo said, trying to joke. You can handle it, Lee said confidently. But you don't have to do it alone. Let me help. Minyo too. We'll prepare together. Over the next 3 weeks, Jiwoo threw herself into research. She studied every case Korvac had shown her and dozens more. She found patterns everywhere. Species using advanced solutions when simple ones would work better, ignoring basic biological needs in favor of technological fixes. Velshara became an unexpected ally. The luminary doctor started visiting Jiwoo's lab every day, bringing her own cases and asking questions. Their conversations ranged from medical theory to philosophy. I've been thinking about what you said, Velshara said one afternoon, about basic needs. I realized something troubling. What's that? We've built our entire medical system around fixing problems after they appear. We never ask why the problems appear in the first place. We never ask if we're creating the problems with our own solutions. Jiwoo nodded. That's exactly it. We design space stations for efficiency and technology. But we forget that living beings evolved for specific environments. Then we wonder why people are stressed and unhappy. This is going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, Velshara warned. You're essentially saying that thousands of years of galactic advancement have led us in the wrong direction. Not the wrong direction, Jiwoo said carefully. Just an incomplete one. Technology is wonderful. Medicine is wonderful. But they work best when they work with biology, not against it. As the symposium date approached, Jiwoo grew more nervous. She practiced her presentation dozens of times. Minyo helped her create visual aids. Lee coached her on how to handle difficult questions. But nothing could quite prepare her for the reality. The night before the symposium, there was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Ambassador Thexrel standing there, with young Kreecha holding their hand. We heard about your presentation, Thexrel said. We came to wish you luck. Kreecha chirped happily and held out something, a small, carefully folded piece of metal shaped like a box. The cub had made it themselves, Thexrel explained. A good luck charm. Jiwoo felt tears in her eyes as she accepted the gift. Thank you, both of you. You gave me back my child, Thexrel said simply. This is the least we can do. And Jiwoo, don't be afraid tomorrow. You're not just representing humans. You're representing everyone who has ever felt like their way of thinking wasn't valued. Speak your truth. It matters. After they left, Jiwoo sat holding the tiny metal box. She thought about everything that had happened since that emergency alarm 3 weeks ago. She thought about Kreecha, about the other cases she'd studied, about all the beings in the galaxy who might benefit from a different approach to problems. Lee was right. This was bigger than her. But that didn't mean she couldn't handle it. She looked at her presentation one more time. She had facts, examples, research. But she also had something else, a story about a scared cub in a simple box. Sometimes she realized the story was just as important as the science. She made a decision. Tomorrow she wouldn't just present data. She would tell the truth about what she'd learned. That advancement doesn't mean abandoning the basics. That intelligence includes understanding instinct. That sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. Jiwoo set her alarm and went to bed. Tomorrow would be challenging. But she was ready. After all, she'd already done the hardest part. She'd trusted herself enough to try something new. Everything else was just sharing what she'd learned. The auditorium was the largest space Jiwoo had ever seen. It curved upward in tiers with seats for thousands of attendees from hundreds of species. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars beyond. Stage lights made everything feel both enormous and intimate at the same time. Jiwoo stood backstage, trying to control her breathing. She could hear the crowd settling in, voices in countless languages, the rustle of movement, the hum of translation devices. You're going to be great, Lee said beside her. He had insisted on coming backstage for moral support. Minho was in the front row, giving her a thumbs up whenever she peeked out. There are so many people, Jiwoo whispered. They're here because they want to learn from you, Lee reminded her. You have something valuable to share. Remember that. The introduction began. A tall being with silver skin, the symposium organizer, spoke about the importance of new perspectives in medicine. Then came Jiwoo's introduction. The organizer listed her credentials but spent more time talking about Kreecha and the box. Please welcome Dr. Kang Jiwoo, who will present on instinctual psychology and the power of simple solutions. Jiwoo walked onto the stage. The applause was polite but reserved. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, some curious, some skeptical, some already deciding she was wasting their time. She took a breath and began. 4 weeks ago, I didn't know what fear cascade was. I didn't know anything about Vexian biology. I was just a xenobiologist studying microbes. She paused, letting that sink in. But I did know about a cat I once rescued on Earth. This cat was so frightened that it wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't let anyone near it. Everyone at the shelter tried to help. We gave it medicine. We played calming music. We tried everything we could think of. She brought up an image on the display behind her, a photo of herself as a younger woman, holding that same cat which was now calm and purring. What finally worked was a cardboard box, just a simple box that the cat could hide in. Within a day it was calm. Within a week it was ready for adoption. The audience was quiet now, listening. When I saw Kreecha, the Vexian cub, I recognized the same behavior, a frightened predator looking for shelter. So I suggested we try the same solution. Give the cub a box, a small enclosed space where it could hide and feel safe. She showed the footage of Kreecha entering the box, then the vital signs stabilizing. Some people in the audience gasped. Others leaned forward in their seats. Now I could stand here and give you data about stress hormones and behavioral patterns, and I will in a moment. But first I want to talk about why this worked when advanced medicine failed. Jiwoo clicked to her next slide. It showed a simple diagram of a cave. Vexians evolved as ambush predators living in crystal caves. For millions of years, their survival depended on having a safe den. That instinct doesn't go away just because they've developed technology and joined the galactic community. It's still there, deep in their biology. She showed more examples. The Kryn soldiers who needed smaller spaces. The luminary colony that needed longer day-night cycles. Each case followed the same pattern. Advanced beings with advanced technology ignoring their basic biological needs. We've spent thousands of years advancing, Jiwoo said. Building better technology, creating better medicines, designing more efficient spaces. That's wonderful. That's necessary. But somewhere along the way, many species have disconnected from their evolutionary past. They've forgotten that they're not just minds, they're bodies too, with instincts and needs that technology can't replace. She could see some people nodding. Others still looked skeptical. That was okay. She kept going. Humans are young in the galactic community. Many of you know we're still closely connected to our evolutionary past. Some species see that as primitive. But what if it's actually a strength? What if staying connected to our instincts helps us see solutions that others miss? Now came the hard part. Jiwoo showed a comparison chart. Traditional galactic medicine versus what she was proposing. I'm not saying we should abandon advanced medicine. I'm saying we should combine it with understanding of basic needs. Technology should work with biology, not against it. Medicine should treat the whole being, mind, body, and instinct. She paused, scanning the crowd. I call this instinctual psychology. It's about asking not just what treatment can we apply, but what does this being fundamentally need? The presentation continued for another 20 minutes. Jiwoo showed data, explained methodology, answered the obvious objections before they could be raised. But she kept coming back to the central point. Simple solutions matter. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then someone in the back started clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was applauding. Some people even stood up, but not everyone was convinced. As the applause died down, a luminary scientist in the front row raised their hand. Dr. Kang, this is very interesting, but how do you propose we systematize this? How can we create protocols for something as vague as instinctual needs? Before Jiwoo could answer, Velshara stood up from where she'd been sitting in the audience. If I may, Velshara said, I was skeptical too. I've been a doctor for 40 years and Dr. Kang's methods seemed unscientific at first, but I've spent the last month working with her, studying her approach. The luminary doctor walked to the stage, standing beside Jiwoo. What I've learned is that Dr. Kang's methods are scientific. They're just asking different questions than we're used to, instead of what medication can fix this. She asks, why is this being struggling? The answers lead to different solutions. Sometimes those solutions are high-tech. Sometimes they're as simple as a box. More hands went up. Questions came fast, some challenging, some genuinely curious. Jiwoo answered them all as best she could, admitting when she didn't know something, promising to research questions she couldn't answer immediately. Then something unexpected happened. Ambassador Thexerl stood up from the middle of the auditorium. Young Kreacha was with them, standing on a seat to see better. I would like to speak, Thexerl announced. My child was dying. The best medical minds in the galaxy could not help. But this human, this young scientist who didn't even know my species, she saved Kreacha's life. How? By understanding something we had all forgotten, that our children need to feel safe. Not just be safe. Thexerl picked up Kreacha, who waved cheerfully at Jiwoo. My child brought something to show you, Thexerl continued. Kreacha held up a small box. Not the metal one from before, but a new one they'd been carrying. Everywhere we go now, Kreacha brings a box. It makes them feel brave. That is what Dr. Kang taught us. That feeling safe helps us be brave. The room erupted in applause again, this time warmer and more genuine. After the presentation, people crowded around Jiwoo. Scientists wanted to collaborate. Hospitals wanted to implement her methods. Universities wanted her to teach. It was overwhelming but exciting. 3 days later, the Galactic Medical Council made their decision. They were establishing a new research initiative called the Institute for Instinctual Psychology. Jiwoo would lead it, with Velshira as co-director. They would study how to combine advanced medicine with understanding of biological needs. More importantly, the council issued new guidelines. Every medical facility would now include what they called comfort zones, simple spaces designed to meet species-specific needs for shelter and security. The first ones were already being installed throughout the Nexus Prime Station. People started calling them Jiwoo's boxes, though Jiwoo tried to discourage that name. It's not about me, she protested to Lee one evening over dinner. Of course it's about you, Lee said, smiling. You changed how the galaxy thinks about problems. That's worth celebrating. Oh, and the council officially raised humanity's status from junior member to contributing member. First time that's happened in less than a century. Because of a box? Jiwoo asked, amazed. Because you showed that human thinking has value, Lee corrected. The box was just the example. 6 months later, Jiwoo stood in her new office at the Institute. It was bigger than her old lab, with windows overlooking the station's main plaza. Through those windows, she could see one of the new comfort zones, a series of small, enclosed spaces where people could go when they felt overwhelmed. As she watched, a young Kryn entered one of the spaces and closed the door. Minutes later, they emerged looking calmer and more centered. There was a knock on her door. Kreacha bounded in, now noticeably bigger than 6 months ago, followed by Thexerl. Dr. Jiwoo, Kreacha said in careful human language. I found something for you. The young Vexian held out another box, this one decorated with drawings and what looked like Vexian writing. Kreacha makes them for friends now, Thexerl explained, teaching other young ones that it's okay to need a safe space. Jiwoo accepted the gift, feeling that familiar tightness in her throat. Thank you, both of you. After they left, Jiwoo set the box on her desk next to the metal one from months ago. Her computer showed dozens of new case files, species experiencing problems that traditional methods couldn't solve. Each one was a puzzle, a chance to ask different questions and find simple solutions. She thought back to that emergency alarm 6 months ago, when everything had started. She'd just been trying to help a frightened child. She'd never imagined it would lead to all of this. A new institute,